Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Northwest Georgia Cryptics. I am Rick Weaver, your host, and as always, joined with my co-host, Mr. Blake Duckworth. Blake, glad to have you back again, buddy.
Yeah, I apologize about the absence. I've been busy, and last week kind of didn't plan on having that one, and unfortunately, by the time you let me know about it, it was already too late. So,
Right. Well, we're glad to have you back tonight. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest, Mr. Tyler, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Tyler. Mr. Tyler Bounds. Um, Tyler joins us tonight. Going to be a real good show. Tyler's actually worked on segments of finding Bigfoot. Tyler's a researcher. I think he said he's been doing this since the early 2000s. Blake, you want to go ahead and open up, buddy?
as always, guys, we can't thank you for your support enough. And if you're not already subscribed, just go ahead and hit the subscribe button, bell notification, like, and a comment. If you want to go ahead and bring him on, Ricky.
All right, everybody, welcome Tyler to the show. Hey, buddy.
How's it going, brother?
No, it's going quite well. It's going quite well. Besides, the weather here in Washington is pretty craptastic right now. A lot of rain, but we had like the driest summer on record.
I was about to say a bunch of much needed rain, just not all at one time though.
Well, that's kind of what Washington
take it how you can get it.
Used to be famous for, but yeah, we had a bomb cyclone the other day, and now we're in the middle of a atmospheric river. So, lots of rain. So good for that. It also officially puts an end to our wildfire season, and and now finally mushrooms are popping up out in the woods. That's another interest of mine, foraging for fungus and mushrooms, and so those are finally popping up as well. So no complaints. Rain is what makes rivers flow. It's what makes my home state of Washington mossy and green, and so I don't want it to be dry and all burn up. So thank goodness for rain.
Have you guys had a lot of flash flooding out there?
Not really. Not really. We don't really have flash floods out here because we have such a robust, watershed system. Lots of rivers, lots of streams. So there's always some place for the water to go.
Yeah.
But when there's an extreme amount of water, then it does the rivers will get high and flood, but it's usually like incremental, like it's getting deeper, not like flood
all at one time. Yeah, you're not going from no water to standing in 5 foot of water in a couple minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that doesn't really happen here. We, especially when it's something warm, kind of like how it is now, when we have a lot of snow in the mountains and then it warms up and then you get like a rain on snow event and then really have a lot of snow melt. So then that's when the river, the volume of water moving around really gets high then. So, but we're not at that point now. We have had some minor flooding, but it hasn't been anything too.
Yeah. All the reason I was asking, because our news here, of course, was talking about all that going on in your area, and they made it sound like they were a lot of flash flooding going on.
Yeah, I mean, no, we can handle it. If there was this amount of rain in like Utah or something, all the slot canyon stuff like that, then then there would be like extreme mudslides and that sort of thing, and And I can't speak for what's happening in the mountains right now, but where we are, it's just, it's rain. It's typical rain that, us here in Washington are used to it, and we can handle it.
So if you want to go ahead and just kind of tell, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have two cameras on my computer, and I keep looking at the wrong one. Yeah. So my name is Tyler Bounds. I live in Washington State. Grew up in the Cascade Mountains of Washington. We're in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains. And when I was very young, like 4 or 5 years old, I went on a hike with my grandfather's Boy Scout troop. I was down in Southern Oregon for some reason, like a family reunion or something, and I went on this hike with my grandfather. And in the beginning, middle, end, I don't even remember when. I was really little. I have really very little recollection of details. But we were hiking along some path. As far as I know, we were somewhere in Northern California, from what I got from my grandfather earlier, or later. I'm sorry, after post hike, and actually several years after that. And so we were going down this trail, and this big thing crosses the trail, and then there was a smaller one not far behind it. And I remember looking at the little one, and and I kind of sort of remember. It's been so long. I mean, it's been 45 something years ago. I just turned 50 this year. So, and I try to remember the things, and not what I want to remember or what I think I remember, or the fog of time and misremembering things. But I've thought about this for a long time, since I was a little kid. But I saw this thing, and it looked at us. Not necessarily that I locked eyes with it, but it looked at us and then went into the woods, and I wasn't really sure what was going on. I remember the flurry of activity with my grandfather and all these Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever they were. And and I remember hanging out while they poured stuff in these footprints, going back to the ranch. And I remember my grandfather taking these footprint casts and putting them up against this outbuilding. And there were probably 10 to 15 other footprint casts up against this building. And I had no idea what Bigfoot was. No idea. I mean, you could have told me Bigfoot, and I'd have been like, what? Would have been grasshoppers, dogs, elephants, Bigfoot, seals, dolphins. I mean, I wouldn't have known that these don't exist. So, and years after that, I would be watching TV and, see like a caveman or, Bigfoot teaming up with a $6 million man in the mid 70s, and me saying, that's what I saw with Grandpa. And my mom and dad like, yeah, that's Bigfoot. And like, oh, well, that's what I saw in the footprints. And they're like, yeah, the footprints. And, and in years after that, I would go down to my grandparents' house. It's like a 500-mile trip one way. So we weren't going down there all the time, but every couple years we'd go down there, every 2 or 3 years, for some family function or a family reunion or something like that. And I would go down, and I distinctly remember just standing there and staring at these footprint casts. Like, what are these? Where did they come from? Why does Grandpa have them? where did he get them? But it wasn't really a thing that we talked about. I don't recall conversations with my grandfather about it, like where did you get these? Why were you looking for him? Why were you looking for Bigfoots? And and my grandfather passed away when I was pretty young, so I didn't get a chance to have serious conversations about where these things came from, what he was doing, what his interest was. I do know that he was a hunter, and he was kind of a adventurer, outdoorsman, kind of survivalist sort of guy, even back in the 60s and 70s. And he was also always kind of a get rich quick guy. Like he's going to invent something and make $1 million, or he is going to, he had a 5,000 acre ranch down in southern Oregon, and he was always like, I'm going to sell half the ranch and make $1 million. It was always $1 million. He always wanted to be a millionaire, or just say, I have $1 million. So I can totally picture him, in the late 60s, when all that stuff was going on in Northern California, Willow Creek and Bluff Creek area, Ray Wallace, all that stuff after Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin were down in there in 67, all those footprints happening, Jerry Crew and punching all those roads in through the Trinities and all that stuff. I can totally see my grandfather being like, there's a Bigfoot out there. I'm going to go down there with a car full of guns. I'm going to go shoot me a Bigfoot, and I'm going to be rich. I'm going to sell it to a museum or a circus or whatever. So that's pretty much my take on his interest. And after he passed away, me and my family went down to Oregon to go get.
Now, do you know if he had any encounters?
I do not. I have no idea. I've asked my grandmother about it, and all she ever really told me was, "Oh, that old thing. Your grandpa used to go look for that old guy. That silly or big old thing or whatever." And it was always kind of a matter of fact thing that, like, yeah, Bigfoot. But she was also Bigfoot was a he. It wasn't it. There was only one. It wasn't Bigfoots or them or those Bigfoots.
They weren't a species of them running around.
Right. Yeah, there was one. There's one Bigfoot, and it's like, oh, you're looking for that old thing. Your grandpa used to go look for that old man, or that old, whatever her term was. And I would ask her, and she was really vague, like, yeah, he'd go out, he'd go looking for that silly old thing. And like, where did he go? Oh, I don't know, he would just go out, like,
like daddy in on every question almost.
Right. So yeah, and it was just kind of a my father, my grandfather's son, didn't really know either. It was always kind of he knew about it, but he didn't really give it much thought until I saw one, or saw the two, had the sighting with my grandfather. And then when I was getting an interest in going to the libraries and checking out books and Bigfoot books and reading these Bigfoot books, and then my father, I think, because he would pick them up like, oh, Bigfoot, and then he'd read something like, whoa, this sighting, this guy saw one, like 10 miles from where we live, from where I grew up, and then come to learn that area where I grew up is, a hot spot. Cascade Foothills, Darrington. So, I mean, there's a lot of classic stories, encounters, and sightings.
You couldn't ask for a better place to be located.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, unbeknownst to me, I'm in a Bigfoot, hotspot. And so I was very interested in it, but went in. I never went on a trip or go into the woods or like a camping trip to go look for a Bigfoot. It was that was never like my main thing to
No,
do.
no, basically no field research at that point.
Exactly. But every time I did go to the woods, I was always, just kind of like, we're, always like
Paying attention to
I'm
everything.
ready to see a Bigfoot. I don't know if I'm going to, I don't know how to, but I'm ready. I'm ready to see. I'm ready for it. Because this is where they live, and so, and I used to go, or not used to, still do. I grew up in the woods. I'd, go out in the woods all day long. My mom would be tired of me being in the house, like, go outside, just be back in time for dinner. And she had no idea. Dude, I'm like 7, 8 years old, 9, and I'm just going to the woods. I'm going down the river. I cross the river. I get lost somewhere, have no idea where I am, go back across the river, find my way back at night, scratched up and dirty and wet and muddy, and I'm like, go wash your hands. It's dinner time. And and I was, it was never like, where have you been? Where'd you go? I was worried sick. It's like, no, we live in the woods. This is what, I'm down at the river. I'm catching frogs. I'm pulling apart owl pellets and looking at the bones inside of them, picking berries, following animal tracks, posting up and watching, I see beaver footprints. There's a beaver around here, and I will sit there for hours until I see a beaver. I'm like, oh my gosh, I saw a beaver. And, and so from a really young age, I was always been into animals, always been in nature, always been in, even, 4 years old, 5 years old, if not sooner, was super into dinosaurs, still am. I went to college for paleontology. So I know a bit about dinosaurs, evolution, prehistoric life, the evolution of man and and all animals. It's been a lifelong passion of mine. So, reading all this stuff and also reading about the fossil record and stuff that like Grover Krantz was writing about.
I hate to cut you off. If I don't do it now, I hate to cut you off. But if I don't ask now, I will totally forget. So, what's your opinion on what a Bigfoot is? Is it a lost species? Is it a human hybrid? Is it or is it just something that we've never discovered?
Personally,
well, of course, it's something we've never discovered, but
I mean, yeah, but it may be something we haven't discovered. There's a very small percentage of animals, organisms that get preserved in the fossil record. There's very tiny percentage that actually, bones and body parts get covered and preserved in such a way to allow for fossilization. Most things get, it dies, it gets torn apart, it gets thrown in a million pieces, critters eat the bones, it's gone. And, but for something to be covered up in a mudslide or in a river or some, rock slide, dirt slide event, a burrow collapsing, something like that, is exceedingly rare. So that, if there, just because we haven't seen a fossil of it in the last 100,000 years or million years, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not out there.
Well, of course. I mean, look at all the land that we've never really took samples from or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a needle in a haystack.
So, yeah. So it could be the most logical thing is that it is some ape, hominoid, some sort of Paranthropus or a Gigantopithecus type thing. Maybe not that exact species, because maybe we don't have that type fossil. But I mean, that's what I think it is. I don't think it's a ape human hybrid, because they're too widespread. They've been seen all over the planet, and on almost every continent, and and here in North America, they've been seen since human prehistory. There's cave paintings and native art that I've been to that place in outside of Fresno where the big hairy thing and and that's like 1,500 years old, 1,000 years old, 1,500 years old or something.
People are seeing something.
People are seeing something just because we haven't seen it in the fossil record. I think that's what it is. I don't think it's from the 28th dimension. I don't think that it's some government.
It's something scientifically that's not been discovered yet.
Right. Exactly.
Because I mean that's the thing. Like we have DNA that has no specific link to any sample that we've ever received.
Right.
So we have nothing to match it to.
Right. And I think it's very pretentious of us to think that we know everything about everything, and that we have to match it up to some fossil that we know. It might match up to a fossil we don't know, something we haven't found yet. It might match up to a fossil that we never find. We may never know. So that's what I think, not based on any evidence that I have personally seen, or I haven't.
That's just your hypothesis. I mean, that's your opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes the most scientific sense to me. Yeah. I mean, that's the most biologically valid answer that I think.
Now, just another question on your opinion. Do you think, talking about the sightings on different continents and all around the world, do you think the genetics are truly the same across the board, or do you think they're kind of different in certain areas? Or
it would be weird if they were all the same. If they were all the same, that would be weirder than if they're all different.
Yeah.
It's same as like bears. There's bears. All bears are bears, but there's brown bears, there's black bears,
grizzly,
there's polar bears, and then there's like weird in between bears, like the cinnamon bears and the Kermode. What are they called? The Kermode bears, or British Columbia.
Yeah.
There's different there's brown bears in Russia and Kamchatka that are the same as the brown bears and the grizzly bears and the Kodiak bears.
Slightly different. Yep.
Different. And then there's the Russian grizzly bear or brown bear that is the same but a little bit different. So, but you can look at every single one of those bears and say, that's a bear. I can tell that's a bear. That one looks. That one's a different color. This one's a little bit bigger. This one has
a bear
on its hump, and some that look exactly the same. But if you did get a DNA sample and did mumbo jumbo in a test tube in a laboratory, like, nope, these come up as two different bears, even though they look the same, and they could interbreed, but they're still the same genus. They're still bears, but they're different species, and but they're still the same family. They're still a bear. So, and they're widespread. They're not in Australia. There's koala bears, but they're not really bears. And there's panda bears, which are kind of bears, but they're a weird kind of bear. And they're kind of this weird thing. They have a thumb and they sit around, eat bamboo, and are like stoned all day long. So there's radically different animals that look radically different, and then some that look exactly you couldn't tell them apart except for in the laboratory. So yeah, the things the Yarans in Russia, the the little orang pendeks in Indonesia, and and the other weird things, the mapinguari in South America. Who knows what that is? That's some weird monkey thing, or who knows? And there's the Yowie in Australia, which also seems like a completely different thing that seems really scary and violent. And I hope I never run into one of those things. They seem like the kind of thing that would come up to you and rip your arm off and beat you to death with it. So
not a good outcome.
no, exactly. It's like, yeah, do you want to go in the woods, look for the Yowie? No, I'm good here. Yeah, I'll wait here. You guys go and you guys go
Let me know when you get back.
right. Tell me all about it. So,
Okay, I've got a question for you, bud.
What's that?
We have our viewers all the time, and everybody I run into. The biggest thing is, and we were talking about bears here. The biggest thing here in Georgia that we get, well, with all the bears that we have running around, we know they're here.
Mm-hmm.
We find evidence of them. We see them. If Bigfoot is out there running around, then why have we not found a leg bone, or we've not found an arm bone? Whatever. Well, I've hunted the mountains in my home area since I was 7 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and as of to yet, even with the population of black bear that we have in this area, until this day, I have never myself run up on a carcass of a bear in the woods.
Right.
So what's your outtake on that?
But they're out there. I mean, I've seen tons of bears, and I've come across exactly one bear skull, one bear carcass in my entire life. And that was up in Alaska, and it was really weird. And there was also a bent rusted rifle and a human skull in the same little area. So it's like, that's kind of crazy. That was a bear person fight, and they both lost. So that's the only bear thing I've ever found in the woods. So,
well, and the whole thing about that, who's to say that somebody's not just walked past a body before, bones per se, after decomposure and everything, and that person didn't know what they were looking at.
yeah.
So nothing ever came of it. Nobody, the right persons never found bones.
Exactly. And I mean, number one, and for example, I'll because my expertise, if you want to call it that, is here in the Pacific Northwest, and nothing really lasts long here. I mean, as an experiment, I put a trail camera on a deer carcass that I found that I think had been hit by a car. Got into the woods a couple 100 feet and laid down, and I think it, and it just died. And so I put a trail camera on it just to see how long it took for it to go from this body to nothing. And I can't remember exactly how long it took, but I used to have it written down, but it wasn't very long. It was, like 3 weeks, I think. And plus, everything's so mossy here. I mean, within not very long, there's like moss growing on bones, makes the bones really brittle, and eventually they just kind of crumble. There's also porcupines that come chew on bones, stuff, and here we have pine needles. We have all these fir trees. Pine needles fall off, they get blown off, and it's amazing how they will cover something.
Yep.
And then that just turns into soil, and it's really acidic. It's all these acidic, pine needles that just kind of like dissolve everything away. And I've spent a lot of time in the woods. I've found articulated skeletons of an elk that haven't been there too long, but it's weird. Like, wow, that looks like it just laid down and died, and nothing has messed with it, which is weird. but it looks like it's been there for a while. And then other times, someplace where I knew that there was a carcass or a corpse, and in no time at all, it's gone. And, and there's little pieces of bone that big that are spread around, and they're all in little, and it would take a trained anatomist to look at a piece of bone that big
and tell what it is.
Know what it is.
Yep.
And
that being
said, there is a story from not far from where I grew up, actually, of a woman who is an anthropologist. She was actually out studying some Native American grave site areas and rumored grave, or not so much grave areas, because they didn't always bury their dead, but there were like ceremonial things that they did. Not every tribe, like, we got to bury them 6 feet underground. Sometimes they're like, send them off in a canoe, burn them, feed them to the weasels or whatever. And but she was on one of her days off. She's hiking down a river and came up on a piece of bone, and she's like, that's a human bone. Maybe, it washed out some grave or, some Native American remains. And then she started looking at it. She's like, if this is a human bone, this is like an 8-foot tall human. And, because it's just huge. It's a piece of a leg bone, but it's twice the size of what a human leg bone should be. So she started looking around, and she supposedly found some other bone fragments in that area. And, it's in a river, so it's hard to tell where they came from. Did they fall into the river right there? Did they get washed downstream in some, a flood event? Did something erode? There's so many variables. And from what I understand, she went up and down river, went up river, all over the place, never really found any other bones. And then it becomes one of those stories that the bones got sent off somewhere and then got lost in the mail, never got to where they were supposed to go, lost forever. We have no idea, can't go look at these bones and, get a second opinion or do a more in-depth study. But, it's more than just a rumor, because there was actually newspaper article or two, which doesn't make anything true at all. But there were newspaper articles that, talking about, this discovery. So, so for anything to be preserved out in the woods, whether it's here in the Pacific Northwest, down there in the South, where it's moist and mushy and everything's gooey, or even, in the Southwest where it's dry and things just kind of dry up and turn into, and then, literally turn into dust and blow away. Or you find it later and it's totally mummified, like really weird looking. And, so it's rare to find any bones. And most of the bones you do find are deer, rabbits, raccoons, stuff like that, which are a lot more common than cougars, bears, coyotes, a lot of that stuff that, usually they'll die just of old age, go curl up in the middle of a thicket underneath some rock ledge somewhere, and curl up, and they don't feel well, they curl up, they go to sleep, they die, and we never see them. Most people, when they're going in the woods, stick to a trail that's about 1.5 feet wide, and they're hiking around like, we went to the woods, we went all over the place. No, you were following this little path like that big. And, it's rare. Not that many people go off trail to actually go see, they see the same thing that every other person saw from this, from this vantage point, and getting off that trail and going where there aren't trails, where you get to see, how things kind of really work, in my opinion, and not where the people have made everybody go and everybody experience the same thing. So, so it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people don't find bones, because they're not looking for bones. And if they are, they're either sticking to a trail or they're driving like the same back road or logging road that, and looking from their big car. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that hundreds of times, but I also like to get off trail and appreciate getting off trail, and then that's when you see the real things. And
well, and you brought up a big point that I like to talk about, is talking about how things go certain places to die.
Mhm.
As intelligent as these beings, creature, whatever you want to refer to them as, they're not going to go on the side of the road to die. They're going to go somewhere that's secluded, more than likely. And by the time their body decomposes, if a person ever comes through that area, they're done gone.
We'll take was the hoe?
Summer days?
No, the big one. Yeah, that one. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sorry, I had to order another beer.
You're fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, and they live in such remote places. They're born someplace that we haven't found. They live someplace we haven't found, and of course, then they're going to die someplace we haven't found. So, the likelihood. I mean, maybe someday, and maybe people have found bones and didn't even know it. Once again, they have no idea what they're looking at. They look at it like, okay.
And stories like you were just talking about, how those bones just conveniently never made it to where they were going.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there multiple
and there's so
stories.
many stories like that too, and more often than not, you hear some story that gets passed down and it gets turned into the telephone game. It's like somebody heard this, they tell somebody, someone hears that, they tell somebody, and by the time
it's completely different by the time it gets to the last person.
Exactly. And then when you go back to the beginning, like, where did you get this story? Well, so and so told me. So then you're going backwards, and like, oh, I read it in a newspaper. Well, which newspaper? Where were you living? Where did you grow up or whatever? And then you can go back and look at that newspaper and like, well, I didn't see that article, and then is it, a lot of times you start chasing these stories down and they just kind of evaporate. So, but other times, thank you so much. But other times there's some legitimacy, some grain of truth.
It has an origin.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And even if that origin is somebody just pulling something out of their ass, like, hey, this is what I think, and then it gets told as fact, and which is also, I've had that experience as well. I mean, because I've I don't know if everybody watching right now or listening or however you're doing your thing, but I worked on that television program Finding Bigfoot that was on Animal Planet, and I was on that show for like 5 years, and and for several years prior to that, I'm a BFRO investigator, Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, since 2008, and and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of witnesses. I mean, and all over the country. I've traveled all over this country. I've been to every state except for 2 of them, and and mostly doing Bigfoot stuff. Talking to witnesses, making TV show, filming, tracking down stories, going on Bigfoot expeditions, going to conferences, in various states. And I've, believe me, I've heard my fair share of baloney stories that people like, this is what happened. Like, well, how, and you start asking some questions and it, once again, just,
it all falls apart. Yeah.
Like, yep. Like those bones in the ground, they just kind of and turn to dust and blow away. And Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So it happens, but you have to be diligent, and and once you're separating the crap from the cream, then then you have some really legitimate stories, and those are the ones that you can learn, or infer behaviors, and what were they doing? This makes sense. This is what they're sounds they make, activities and actions that they're doing, and mating behaviors, or hunting behaviors, feeding behaviors, and once again, knowing more about how a lot of other animals and how the natural world works for a lot of other critters out there. When you hear some story like, oh, the Bigfoot was doing this, like, oh, well, that makes sense because these other animals do this, and it all, so that makes sense, because it's kind of a universal thing on the planet. All animals got to eat. All animals got to poop. All animals got to make baby animals, and it's all kind of the same thing across all animals on the planet. They all, that's what's going on. So, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
So,
no, you do not apologize to me. I'm just along for the ride, man.
How long have you worked for the BFRO?
I went on my first Bigfoot expedition. I went down to Bluff Creek, California in 1992 with a rental car and a flashlight, and I was going to go look for Bigfoot. And I drove around all these logging roads in the middle of the night in the dark with my window down. And anytime I heard a noise, I would stop the car, jump out of the car with my flashlight, run into the woods, because that's how you find Bigfoots, right? I mean, I had no idea, dude. I was 21 years old, man. It was 1992. But it was my first, I'm going to the woods. I'm going to go look for Bigfoot. I'm going to Bluff Creek, where all the stuff went down. Met Al Hodgson at the store there in Willow Creek. He gave me a map, and he hand wrote stuff on it like, this is what happened a week ago. This is what happened 2 weeks ago. Because people go to the woods, they have experiences. They go to the store, tell Al. He puts little pins on his map. So I used to have this hand noted thing from Al Hodgson that I still. Oh my gosh, I wish I had it. But at the time, I didn't really know who Al Hodgson was. He was the old guy at the store and sold me the map. And, right now, if I still had it, it would be like treasured
gold, yeah.
But, my first BFRO expedition was in 2008. And, and I went out and with all these people, and I totally thought I was going to go on this expedition, and I was going to meet all these Bigfoot experts, BFRO investigators, and they're going to have the key. Dude, they're going to know the secret Bigfoot handshake, and I'm going to get a peek behind the Bigfoot curtain. And I got there, and I'm like, you guys don't know anything. You guys are a bunch of yahoos. You know as much as I do, because we've all been checking out the same library books. We've all seen the same documentaries. These guys don't know any more than I do. They've just been in the woods doing this camping with a purpose, going to look for Bigfoots and having experiences. And then once again, these experiences repeat, and then you can infer some behavior. And like, if we make these calls, they're going to answer these calls.
That's how you learn stuff, is taking from experiences.
And that's, and so it wasn't very long after I went on this expedition, and when we're out in the woods and they hear something and there's a noise and they're like, what was that? I'm like, oh, dude, that's a nightjar, or that's, whatever owl, because I know the woods, I know the critters, I know tracking, just all these skills and knowledge that I had, and, my skill set from school biology and geology and anatomy and physiology and fossils and just my lifelong interests all kind of really jive really good with Bigfootery. And so, after this expedition, then I got an email like, hey, you want to come on a private expedition, not one of these BFRO. We're still BFRO investigators, but, this isn't like one of those, you pay and you come on expedition. We're inviting you to come to the woods. And then I did that a couple times. And then they're like, you should be an investigator. And so it took me like 3 or 4 months to go from absolute newbie to investigator. And I thought that was a pretty big deal. But then I also realized that I still don't know the secret Bigfoot handshake. I still don't have the keys to that Bigfoot door. I don't know anything, and now, and I went on 3 BFRO expeditions this summer for the first time in several years. I haven't really done a whole lot of like field research or expeditions or doing that sort of thing because I did that all day, every day for almost 5 years. I mean, everybody says it would be my dream to go look for Bigfoot every day. I mean, that was my dream. And then it happens and like, I would get home, people like, dude, you want to go to the woods? You want to go squatching? Like, hell no. I've been doing it every day.
It took the fun out of it.
Yeah, I'm going to sit here on my deck. I'm going to pet my dog that I haven't seen in 4 months. I'm going to drink copious amounts of beer, and I'm going to sleep for 3 days straight. And the last thing I want to do is go to the woods and look for, I'm not, no. And, and when I go back to work from my break, then I have to go in the woods all day, every day, all night with, Cliff and Renee and Matt and Bobo and everyone else. And, so, watch what you wish for. I mean, it's still the greatest job I ever had. It's still amazing. I still like
a lot of great experiences.
Dude, I going from that 4-year-old kid that saw those things and cast those footprints and checking out every book in the library and, in the early 90s wearing like Bigfoot shirts and, that I, had to travel a long ways to find a Bigfoot shirt or a Bigfoot sticker. And now, dude, I could probably look out this window right here and see 10 cars with Bigfoot stickers on them. So, but it's weird going from the newbie, whatever, and now I go to Bigfoot expeditions, and now I'm introduced as Tyler Bounds, world famous Bigfooter, so many experiences, whatever. I'm like, really? I'm that? I mean, I guess I am. But it went from weird. It
went from a childhood dream to reality.
And it's like, and now I'm the seasoned expert. Now I get called to do podcasts or get called up by, a friend of a friend who works for National Geographic. I'm like, hey, I'm writing this article. Can I interview you? Like, yeah. Why me? Well, because you're Tyler Bounds, dude. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I was at a brewery last weekend and some people were sitting outside in beer garden and some people were whispering, and this one finally, have I seen you? I'm like, I don't know where. She's like, Bigfoot. I'm like, what? Really? How did you I even had a face mask on. How do you, But she still recognized me. It's like, oh my gosh, I love finding Bigfoot. And it's just.
But bizarre. In reality, you're just a normal person. Like, I mean, it's amazing how. Just because you're involved in something like that, people view you differently, and it's just to you. I know sitting there, it don't make no sense. I mean,
no, I mean, and a few years ago when the show was really, really popular, and it is easy for it to go to your head, because dude, when people are coming up to you and like, can I get a picture with you? Can you sign my thing? Can I get an autograph? It's like, what? What? Why? But everybody knew I was on the show, even though I wasn't always in front of the camera. Oftentimes I was. But, but everybody, they would, talk about me behind the scenes. Cliff would write about me in the blog. People would come to the town halls and see me. So people, they're like, dude, you're the fifth beetle of finding Bigfoot. And, and it is easy to, I mean, I've played the Bigfoot card. I see some cute girl at a bar and like, hey, I was on a TV show. And, I got out a speeding ticket in Pennsylvania because cops like, what's the hurry? I'm like, trying to get to my plane, dude. I'm trying to get to my plane, filming a show here, finding Bigfoot. And he's like, oh, dude, I love finding Bigfoot. Blah, blah, blah. Let me go. I got in Helen, Georgia. I got pulled over and could not find my wallet anywhere. It was in like a pants pocket in the back of this U-Haul. And, and of course I looked dodgy because I'm driving a U-Haul around in the middle of the night trying to find the entrance to the Holiday Inn or whatever I was camping in or staying in that night. And the cop sees me go around the block for the third time. Big U-Haul, of course, 2 a.m. Yeah, that's suspicious. Finally pulls me over and I'm like, yeah, finding Bigfoot. And, oh, you guys filmed here? I'm like, yes, we did film here. Filmed here a couple years ago. Yep, I was on the show. And he's like, oh, I love, so there's been times I'm like, even though I'm not a celebrity, but some people kind of think I am. And sometimes it works. And sometimes, but, that's in the heat of the moment. And when the show was really, really popular. And, and it's kind of, it was weird. But and it still is weird, like I said, I just got recognized last weekend out in the middle of nowhere. And and then I ended up talking about Bigfoot all night long because it's like, just wanted some peace and quiet, go have a couple beers, go hang out. And then, I was literally in the bar till 1 a.m. and talking about Bigfoot with strangers and picking mushrooms and stuff like that too, but still weird. But yeah, so BFRO started 2008. I am still an investigator and researcher. I thought I'd been kicked out of the BFRO. I was kicked out a couple times. People keep putting me back in. But I got invited to go on expeditions this year. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not even BFRO anymore. Like, oh no, you are. I'm like, I got kicked out 2015 or by Matt Moneymaker. She's like, oh yeah, but I put you back in. You're investigator, researcher. And I'm like, oh, cool. I guess, it didn't really matter to me. Because like I said, I took a break for several years and I just kind of went back to backpacking, hiking, just going in the woods without a bunch of batteries, trail cameras, video cameras, audio recorders.
Just going back to the basics. Yep.
Yeah. Solar panels. I mean, all that stuff. And like, no, I'm going to go in the woods. I'm going to go do my thing. And if I see a Bigfoot, then it happens.
Well, that's how most of your encounters are going to happen anyways. When you're tracking through the woods with camera gear and 5-6 people at a time with you, and the chances of you having an encounter are slim to none.
Exactly. And and I always think when I'm out doing what just what I do when I'm in the woods, and I find myself like I'm going to build a fire, so I'm around at dusk, or it's already dark because I've dilly-dallied, like, oh, I didn't go get firewood, and I'm going through the woods with a little headlamp on, picking up sticks, and I always think like, this is when I'm going to see one. You think there's reports like, I was gathering firewood, and then all of a sudden there was these big feet on the ground, and I looked up, and there's a Bigfoot, or the people picking berries, mushroom hunters, people out fishing, just hanging out on the river, hanging out at the lake, people just doing people stuff, that they do when they're in the woods, and not the people that are hunkered down in a camouflage blind with batteries and long-term recording devices and night visions and therms and more batteries and SD cards and and the whole thing. I've done that. Did it for years. Spent how much money on cameras and dash cams and hard drives and computer stuff and GPS stuff. I mean, driving around with a laptop in my vehicle with the GPS hooked on it, so I can watch where I'm driving in real time. And now you can turn on your cell phone and do the same thing. But and it's funny because whatever. Back in the day, we didn't have smartphones. Not everybody had a video camera in their pocket that they can just whip out and record anything, anytime. But yeah, I kind of went back to basics and do what I love and what I enjoy, and still I still have things happen. Oh, thank you. Okay, no worries.
So with that being said, did you guys actually truly have some pretty good encounters while filming the TV show, or because I know how TV shows work. It's about views. So sometimes they'll make something out of nothing, just like a lot of your paranormal shows and stuff do.
Right.
But
we definitely did. I found, when the first episode I worked on, I wasn't really even working on it. I was in Georgia, happened to be in Georgia. It's a weird, long story, but I happened to be in Georgia when they were filming the first episode of Finding Bigfoot. I wasn't even working on the show. I was just there. Ran into those guys. I knew all the cast members. I knew, my buddy who's from Helen, Matt Pruitt. And I just ended up kind of hanging out with them while they were filming. And when we were near Bull Mountain, Georgia, I found a couple footprints that were legit footprints. And on the basis of that, on the strength of that became the first episode of Finding Bigfoot, because we found footprints right off the bat. I found footprints right off the bat. And then, of course, my producer was like, this is easy. Tyler, go find every other episode after that. Hey, Tyler, go find footprints. Tyler. And it doesn't really work.
It don't work that way.
I'm going to try. And I tried for 4.5 something years. But we legit would have wood knocks. We had trees pushed over in Tennessee. I had something scream at me so close in Minnesota that I was scared. Like one of the most frightening times I've had in the woods ever in my entire life. And I've been nose to nose with brown bears in Alaska, or had moose ears back, nostrils flaring, coming at me. But whatever that was in Minnesota, it was behind me. It was in deep, dark stuff, come crashing through. And I'm like, ooh, dude, here comes some critter. And then it just went, ah! And then gone. And no idea. We didn't have a recorder going. We were just hanging out. We were just hanging out. And, and that happened.
That sounds like a couple of experiences you and I have had
a
over the years.
A little bit.
Yeah, we were, and there was a place in Virginia or West Virginia called Spooky Holler, and man, it sounded like a band of monkeys down there. But this was when we weren't filming, we weren't doing active filming. It's like doing scouting stuff with one of my producers or whatever. I don't even remember what I was doing out there, but no cameras, no audio. And then all these noises coming out of there, like, okay, well, we got to come back here with the cast and camera guys and all that. Went out there and, of course it's quiet, some weird noises, but it wasn't like what we heard. It sounded like monster devil monkeys down going off, and no idea. So, but yeah, we definitely had, nothing on the show was scripted. We didn't fake anything. There's never any, there's a little bit of fakery, but not like Bigfoot fakery, but like, hey, we forgot to get a scene in this one state. Let's find a spot that looks like this other state and pretend that we're in that state, Yeah. Because we forgot to get some sound bite or something. And, I had to find I had to make a Vietnam in Utah winter one time. Like, Tyler, go find us a jungle. Like, dude, it's November. It's November in Utah, Salt Lake City, you know. And I found some greenhouse supply place that had a big greenhouse and had like palm trees in it. So we went in this landscape greenhouse supply place, and you know, moved some plants out of the way and framed it so that it looked like they were standing in front of a jungle, and Salt Lake City became Vietnam. You know, stuff like that. But there was never any deceptive editing or things, you know. We never said that something happened that didn't happen. Yeah, you know, so it was frustrating because it is TV. And still to this day, actually until very recently, I had seen barely any of the episodes because it was really hard for me to watch them, because we'd be in a location for a week, film for 150 hours for an episode, and then watch that get melted down into 42 and a half minutes of TV time. And, you know, I'd watch an episode and like, that's not how that happened. What happened? What about the time where, you know, and, you know, I would go out, I would film for 3 days with the guys, and then I'd get like 3 minutes on each episode. I'd get like 2 1.5 minute jumps of here's whoever out in the woods by themselves. And then it goes away. And I'm like, dude, I was out there for 3 days. I filmed 9 hours of tape. And that got turned into, you know, where's the cool moose I filmed? Where's the bear? Where's the footprints? Where's the, you know, the cool stuff that I had filmed that gets edited out because it doesn't tell the story. It doesn't fit with the story that they decide that they're going to tell.
And you already got to compact all this into a 30-minute. Oh, was it 30-minute or hour episodes? I mean,
40. Yeah, it's an hour episode, but with all the commercials and everything, it's 42 and a half minutes.
Yeah,
unless you're in Canada. In Canada, I think it was 43 and a half minutes. So if you watch it in Canada, you're going to see something that you don't see in the States, but I have no idea what that is. It's probably just, you know, something else dumb, some other dumb thing that Bobo was saying or something. So, but yeah, it was amazing. It was incredible. Best job I've ever had. I've had some pretty awesome jobs, but, you know, to be able to travel around the country with my friends and, you know, and get paid to go look for Bigfoot, go camping, you know, at one point in time, I was one of 5 people on the planet that was like getting paid to go look for Bigfoot full time. So it was pretty cool. It really is a dream come true. I mean, you know,
well, it's an experience that you'll never forget. I mean, that, you know, that's something that will stick with you to the day you die.
Exactly. And, you know, and I've reciprocated, you know, I've gone to the libraries where I used to check out books and where I learned all this stuff. And I've gone there and I've given talks and giving back, like, you know, and there'll be 100, 200 people showing up to these little tiny libraries in little tiny towns to come listen to me talk. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know, this is great. And they want to pay me. I'm like, no. I'm giving back. This is where I learned.
I started, yep.
This is where I checked out all these books. And now, like, the author of this book, I'm friends with them now. Bob Gimlin, that I've read about in these books and seen that I'm friends with Bob Gimlin. I mean, it's crazy, you know. And so it came full circle and I had to give back. And, you know, it was amazing, and it was an amazing opportunity.
So I got one question. What has been your favorite experience you've ever had other than, you know, the sighting with your grandfather? What's been the most memorable experience you've had? Not necessarily on the show, just in general.
No. And the place where I'm at, they're closing very soon. So I gotta, I could keep going, and sometimes I get in trouble on these things because I talk for 2 or 3 hours.
We can always we can always have you back on. I mean,
yeah,
anytime you want to, you're welcome.
Do a part 2. But Yeah. 10 years ago, I was doing a Bigfoot expedition here in Washington, and I was out in the woods. I did 3 expeditions back to back. So I was out in the woods for 3 weeks straight. And the very last night, I was so dirty and tired and sunburned and just done and wanted to shower and like, and this is it. Like, this is the last night. I finally get to go home. And I took a bunch of newbies, or I shouldn't say newbies, a bunch of inexperienced people up on this road that I had not been on at that point in time. Like, I'd been everywhere. Like, here's this one road. Don't know where it goes. Let's go up there. And went up this road, and they're all like, Tyler, do a call. And I'm just like, dude, if I have to do one more Bigfoot call. So I just started yelling. I was just like, F you, Bigfoot. I don't care. I hate Bigfoot. I don't even care anymore. I just want but I'm yelling just like, rah. And, done. I don't even care. And this thing yelled back and kept screaming, and kept screaming for like 5.5 minutes. And I had skeptics. I had a cop that was with me, cop, ex-Marine, skeptic, changed his mind. He is now an investigator. He was just on Cliff and Bobo's podcast last week because now 10 years ago, he had an experience with me that changed his life. I mean, this thing was a couple miles away and we could feel it. We could feel it in our chest. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But watching all these people that were like, Bigfoot, whatever. I just came because my wife wanted to
change their life. Yeah, change their life almost.
And it just goes to show that you can do all this stuff by the book. You can go out and do your calls, do your wood knocks, do your thing. And then when all else fails, just try something different. I wasn't even trying to do anything different. I was just done. I was just like, I don't care so much that I'm just going to, I don't care. I mean, that was my call, And then this thing answered back and kept answering and kept yelling. And we're all just like, dude, you hear that? I'm just like, oh my gosh, and all these people, I mean, I still am friends with a lot of those people today, 10 years later. And they still like do that night up on that hill out in Wainuchi, out on the Olympic Peninsula, changed my life. Never heard anything like it. You recorded it. I mean, they used it on the TV show. I was a star witness in a Washington episode. So I was also working on the show, also a cameraman, also the PA, and also the witness. And here's my recordings. And I'd be in front of the camera, then I go back behind the camera, then I go in front of the camera. So it was kind of funny. That's kind of my episode. And but that was really amazing, as far as like Bigfooty stuff. I've also had a ton of great memories with good friends, even nothing Bigfooty happened, but great times, laughs, jokes, drinking beer around a fire, telling fart jokes, and just making memories and
Hey, that's what life's about. I mean, the memories. So anytime you can create memories, especially with something that connects people, I mean, that makes it that much better.
Exactly. I went on these expeditions this summer, and there's people I hadn't seen in 10 years that had came on this expedition, and they're like, my very first expedition was your expedition. And now these people are putting on expeditions, still attending expeditions, and I'm still friends with them. I met them 10 years ago for a weekend out in the woods. And, then we're Facebook friends and whatever. But some of these people I hadn't seen in 10 years. And then I go back, I see them 10 years later, and, we're all older and fatter and slower, but it's still, it's like, wow, it's like a 10-year class reunion, and it's catching up with everybody. Like, here we are in the exact same spot where I met you guys 10 years later.
Like you pick up where you left off.
Exactly. And it's, there's not many things where you can do that with people that totally different politics, totally different beliefs, but we all have this one thing in common, and that's enough to transcend. Like, I've got full-on right-wing friends, and I am definitely not right-wing, but this transcends all that, and that this is what it brings us together no matter what. So, but yeah, if you guys, I would love to come back on here and do this again with you guys sometime, and continue the conversation. I'm sorry I have to cut it short, but
you're good. Yeah, Ricky will get with you on that. We'll just get a date and we'll have you back on here.
Fantastic.
Tyler,
Awesome.
thank you very much for being on tonight, buddy.
Thank you very much, Tyler.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Blake. It was nice meeting you guys. This was a pleasure. And let's do a part 2. I want Tyler Bounds, the revenge. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. This was a blast. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Tyler.
Absolutely.
Interesting guy.
Yeah, I like Tyler. He's pretty cool.
I do too. He's a cool guy. Oh, before we go, I want to show off our new jackets that we've got for the show, or got for the group. Also having t-shirts made up. I'll show this to the folks. Of course, my name on this one. Our Northwest Georgia logo on the front, Northwest Georgia Cryptics. And also a little twist to it. In honor of my great nephew, who is autistic. I had the logo on the back done in the autism colors in the puzzle to show that our group supports autistic children and adults. Of course, got Sasquatch in the middle. Blake, I'm having these made up for all of us. I'm hoping to have yours in by the end of the week. But very good looking jackets. Also t-shirts that we're having made up. I just wanted to show that off to everyone.
That's something we could also look into if anybody's interested in any merch. I mean, something we really haven't talked about, but now that we actually have starting to, have some things ourselves, if anybody's interested, you can always let us know, and we can possibly see about getting you guys some shirts or jackets if anybody wants any.
Right, the shirts, as Blake said, and actually, if we start to sell any of these, I'm going to start donating 20% of the sales to the Autistic Foundation, and the jackets I think is going to run about $40 for them. The shirts is going to be around $17.50. I can get those in large, extra large, double X, triple X. Whatever they need to, whatever size you are, just let us know. But you can contact us either on our Facebook page or hit us up at Northwest Georgia Cryptics. Let's see here. Northwest Georgia Cryptics at gmail.com, and we'd be glad to get those out to you. So, folks, just if you're interested, just hit us up and let us know. Blake, you want to close out the show, bud?
Can't thank you guys enough for your support. If you don't mind, go ahead and hit the like button, comment, subscribe, and bell notification. I hope everyone has a good week. Well, we've got another podcast on Friday. Who's the guest we have on Friday, Ricky?
Hang on just a minute. Actually, Jack, he is a Bigfoot researcher. He's also got a book out. I can't think of the name of it. I will be posting it tomorrow night. Posting the show that we'll have for Friday night. It will be at 10 o'clock. Special show. I want to invite everyone to watch it. And for all those that has watched tonight, I want to thank every one of you, everyone that will watch in the future. Watch this uh, episode in the future. I want to thank everyone. And as Blake says, hit that bell notification, hit the like, uh, then subscribe to the channel. Let YouTube know that you like our content. Blake, anything else before we close out, buddy?
That's all, Ricky.
All right, I'm gonna close her out. Again, thank everybody. Got one comment here. Tim Coker, good night. Everybody, good night.
Bye, buddy.
God bless.